Hey, hello everyone. This is David de Hilster, and no, I'm not Franklin Who. I know he is on vacation. Last time we had this last weekend, I think he was leaving. I think he was on a plane. But I want to welcome everybody from the Chappelle Natural Philosophy Society and also my YouTube channel, DissidentScience.com. Again, you can see in the background here, this is not my office. In fact, we are hoping to move into a new place by the end of the month, and I've got myself in the new place an office slash studio where I can hope to put all the things I need in there, including green screens, the whole thing, good lighting. I've got lighting in here, and I got my setup here, but my dad's been very kind enough to let us use his place while we are in the process of getting a new place to live here in Boca Raton, Florida. And very interesting topic today, which is how and should we unite, the dissidents unite? I know there's a lot of interest in that. In fact, I just want to double check here. We're all actually live. Yes, we are. But actually, with that, I have a message to read from Peter Marquardt. I'm not going to do any screen sharing. It turns out that I think, my computer is actually powerful enough to do the screen sharing, but it often will crash, and I'm not sure really that it's the computer itself. But the software, I think, still is in beta. Maybe it's not in beta yet. That's StreamYard here, and it's a really great service. We're only streaming to 2. We can stream to actually more than that, but we're streaming to 2 channels today. You can see those. I'm known on the YouTube world as David de Hilster, Dissident Science. That's my website and channel if you want to go there. And I want to welcome everybody from both the YouTube, CNPS and Dissident Science. But Peter Marquardt receives our mailings. We have a mailing list. If you want to get on the mailing list, just go to naturalphilosophy.org, one of our channels. For this organization, there they are on the screen there, naturalphilosophy.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter via email. You can also see our website if you want to know pretty much what we're about. You can go to sciencewoke.org, and you can find everything you want to know about dissident science, people who are science woke, people who are challenging the mainstream. So I am going to read this from Peter Marquardt. Who is Peter Marquardt? He's a doctor, I believe, of philosophy or of science, but he is a doctor of philosophy and science. He's been around the MPA for quite a while, and it's pretty. He's a very entertaining speaker, but a really great scientist as well. He was very involved in the 1990s and early 2000s with the organization. He lives in Germany. I'm not sure, maybe Cologne, Germany, but he maybe will try to join. He doesn't have his own computer and stuff, so he goes usually to a public place. But he oftentimes will send me some really great things to read before either our Rio conference, which it looks like we're going to be doing here in Boca Raton, Florida. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, just because I've been so busy with everything and haven't been able to work directly with any universities around the way. But we do want to do the conference, so most likely we're going to be doing our conference in July here in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm negotiating right now. Of course, they sent me a quote. The quotes are always, high because obviously we're a smaller organization, but the idea is everybody can meet here, and we'll talk about that. Hello, Omar from Iraq. Thank you so much for tuning in. Everybody here is welcome. Harry, I see Harry's here, some other people. Welcome, everybody. And here's the address from Peter Marquardt. You can also see him in my documentary film, EinsteinWrong.com. EinsteinWrong.com is my film's name. Einstein Wrong, The Miracle Year. You can take a look at that. You can see him. There's a scene with him, and it's quite a good interview in the film. So, but Again, let me read this from Dr. Peter Marquardt from Germany. He says, you address an important issue in today's video conference. I take the liberty to contribute some thoughts. Establishment people try to impress the public by claiming to be the defenders of the one and only truth, so they don't need to unite. We dissidents are much more individualistic, and our trademark is that we show it. We should therefore demonstrate that our joining forces requires a much more sophisticated effort than that by the official ranks. Accordingly, our critique should address unusual views, usually neglected or suppressed, like telling the public that math must not be the master of physics, but its servant. And we have lots of material to prove it. Furthermore, and maybe more important still, we should always include a critical view on ourselves. This is the best justification for our activities. Have a fruitful conference, a video conference. Again, that's Peter Marquardt, and a really great philosopher from Germany. He worked actually with Don Heaston, rest his soul. They were working on the maximum strength of gravity, the Heaston force, they called something as well. There's some papers from the 1990s, well, no, actually the 2000s, and miss Heaston a lot. Heaston was a super brilliant guy. I mean, you would write a paper, and people would bring papers. At the time, we didn't have the ability to print them before the conference, and he would bring papers, and people would bring their papers and before their talks, and this was for many days. He would literally hand out, you would go to the front of the podium in front of the normally a lecture hall or a lecture room, and give your talk, and Heaston would, politely get your paper. And one of the problems with our organization always is people complaining, I don't get feedback, I don't get feedback. Well, in fact, Heaston would literally, while you were talking, listen to you, read the paper, and give you amazing comments, as if he had read this and studied it for quite a long time. Just amazing people I met along the way. Since 1996 was the first time I was involved with the CNPS. So I want to thank Peter Marquardt for that great introduction, and there's a couple things that I thought were quite well said. He said, accordingly, our critique should address unusual views, usually neglected or suppressed, like telling the public that math must not be the master of physics, but its servant. In fact, this reminds me of Sabine Hossenfelder. You can look her up. Sabina, I think, is the way they pronounce it. I was told I was pronouncing that wrong by one of my viewers, but I think it's Sabina, but it's spelled with an E at the end. Hossenfelder, look her up, or look at the book. She was in particle physics, got her doctoral degree related, and worked at the Large Hadron Collider in Europe. And in 19, boy, I'm getting old. 2017, I believe, she left, or 2016, 2017, she left that organization and that group, and wrote the book called Lost in Math. And of course, you don't have to. Great title, of course, Lost in Math. Talks about very much the same thing. But one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is the dissident community itself. As Peter said in his email to me, he says, we dissidents are much more individualistic, and our trademark is that we show it. And that's very good. And again, I've told this story before, but in the early 2000s, we had a couple of people from Finland, some scientists who came all the way from Finland to our conference. At that time, it was being held pretty much yearly at the University of Connecticut via Dr. Eberly Spencer, who was got her PhD in mathematics from MIT, one of the two ladies in our organization. She must be 98 or 99 years old. She's a vegetarian and has lived a long, pretty healthy life. But she was one of those people who got us all together, and these two Finnish people came, and they basically told me out in I said, how's it going? And they were outside. There was a little area outside where you could stand and I went out there to try to meet them because I would like to do that. Even though I was not even a director, I always try to talk with people because sometimes they come a long way. And they basically said to me, "Well, Dave, one of the reasons this organization is difficult for us, and is that what we came to do was present our ideas, and what everybody else is coming to do is present their ideas." And of course, there are a lot of they basically said this, and they spoke English very well. They said there's a lot of sellers and no buyers, meaning people are going to these conferences basically to tell everybody about their work, but are people listening? If they are listening, are they in fact giving any good feedback like Bob Heaston did? And I think one of the problems again is what is that in our group? And we've tried to various things to try to solve those problems at our conferences itself. We've had the requirement at times that people had to fill out something for each of the talks and give comments back. People, again, people sort of appreciated, but it turned out that it wasn't a lot of work to have those. So every talk, you would be required to fill out the title and the person and give some comments. Of course, what can you do in a very short amount of time? It probably is better. Actually, now that I think of it, I'm thinking literally off the top of my head right now, is maybe what we should do is make the proceedings a month ahead of time, because now today in age we can literally accept the last paper and get them edited literally 2 weeks before the conference, submit them and have them printed and have them sent to the conference in that short amount of time, usually about 7 days, about a week's time. But maybe if we were to have the proceedings with all the papers ahead of time, maybe even a month, and people had a time to read those, then maybe there would be more feedback. But generally, oh boy, here I go. Yawning, I know that makes people yawn, so sorry about that. But generally, we have that same problem, and the question are two things. One, how do we get people to stay there? Number two, how do we get people to get feedback? And number three, how do we even grow our groups? To let you know, in the 1990s and the 2000s, from the early 1990s to the 2000s, there was a surge in the growth of groups. And those groups, I have them listed here. Let me put them out there. But these are sort of groups that were being formed. The CNPS, which is actually the MPA at the time. There's the Electric Universe that sort of grew quite a lot, even a lot more than we did. Tesla Tech, which is based, Steve somebody, I can't never remember good, but really great guy. The Tesla Tech we had a couple of conferences with them. In fact, numbers of our speakers have talked at both the Electric Universe and Tesla Tech from the CNPS. There's a Common Sense group. I'm not sure they had conferences. They may have. That's Bill Lucas was part of that. And there's also then, of course, today, YouTube channels. Some of the YouTube channels have way more subscribers than even I do. And they have some following. And the question is, and there are actually even more groups out there. And the question today is, do we, how do we, and do we make an effort to get ourselves together? One of the things about historically is these groups were pretty much founded and run by and continue to be run by people who were mostly in their retirement age. This was not, young 20s, young 30s, young 40s, those kinds of people getting together and making these groups. Most of them were retired. Oh my gosh. They say it's because you need oxygen. I don't know if that's true if you yawn, but basically the retired group of people are those people who don't have any attachments either financially or peer pressure from a work. For instance, Dr. Edward Dowdy, who worked from NASA, of course, it's not easy to have the views that he does, which is general relativity is wrong, in the workplace that he has. So in the 1990s, 2020s, 2000, early 2000s, 1990s, early 2000s, we had these people and these groups surging and coming together. And I would say between the late 1990s and the early 2000s, we had some of the best conferences we ever had. In the 1990s, the early 1990s, there was a pretty solid group of scientists all dedicated in the beginning really talking about relativity, and then of course it grew, and that was the MPA. And though it was really it was started by John Chappell really because of the special and general relativity. But that again grew, and that conference, I would say the most people we had at our conference from our organization and not from others was maybe 80 or 90 people, maybe pushing 100, but I don't think so. It was between 40 and 60 people on the average in the 1990s, early 90s, and then in the late 90s we had upwards to maybe 70. And then we also had conferences with the Electric Universe, which were at the University of Maryland, and also in Albuquerque, where we had not only the CNPS, actually we had 4 organizations. There was another organization that I'm not listing here, I guess that was still there, but very, very small organization. I think they had one with Tesla Tech just last year. Greg Volk, my comrade in arms, went there and told me they were there, but I can't remember the name of the group. Maybe somebody in the chat can remember who knows that was there. And we had Tesla Tech, which probably had maybe as close to 100 people. We had the Electric Universe, which had to have, at least 50 or 60 people there, in the same way with us. So if you put all those people together, we had a conference, and it was held at the hotel in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so we had a couple hundred people. And we would have a banquet. We had a banquet. The Tesla Tech pretty much had a big room, and they did their thing, and they had their breakout sessions, and we did as well. And then we had a banquet where we had everybody together. And I think the one where we had Tesla Tech, we actually honored Wal Thornhill for his lifetime work with the EU. But the question is that I know the EU has conferences. I think they're having one coming up. They had them pretty regularly when they were growing. But I think what's happening is a couple of things are happening. And one of the reasons we do have more people, our conferences, when you count the number of people at our conferences that come and go, because not everybody can be there all the time, we have about 20 people. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a bit. And if you look at our paying members, meaning people that pay every year, we have a couple hundred of those people. And as people who actually are members that would consider themselves members, we have over 300. So we have quite a lot of people. And like I said, they do pay because without those yearly dues of $35 for seniors and $50 for people who are not seniors, this wouldn't happen. In fact, we wouldn't be here today with StreamYard or our websites or anything because we pay for those. And so there is support. The problem is too, we have lost quite a lot of people. In fact, if you go to our naturalphilosophy.org, our webpage, one of these sites, the top site there, naturalphilosophy.org, go to members, and under memorials, you can see we've lost quite a few of our members in the last 10, 20 years. And as we lose those members, of course, we have that old guard, many of them who went to universities and had a very different experience than people today, where today you don't really need to go to university in reality because you can read almost everything online. At that time, you had to go to libraries and books and try to get stuff and literally have people send you books or papers and do communications with email or even telephone. So we have an older generation in a different time. They are sort of going out. We have a younger generation that's starting to see us, but I think they see us in a different way. But everyone, of course, is suffering from the economic crisis worldwide. It really is there. It's going to have a downturn, at least for those people who do follow economics, which I do. I'm pretty sure we're overdue for one because capitalism, the way we have it, is not working too well. I'm not saying what I would change it to or not. Those are personal things that we talk about. But the truth of the matter is, people don't have the money, both retired people and the average person necessarily, to get to a real conference where they spend the money, take the time, and go. Now, a lot of times people will come once every couple years. That works. Or what we try to do is try to move around the country so that when we do go to areas, I know the Maryland area, the Connecticut area, the Washington State area, even Albuquerque, every one of those places have local people, and those local people, in fact, will join in. But I've been thinking a lot about what we can do to help this problem. We have this little conference, and these people in Albuquerque, that one little, again, I don't know if it's a cosmology and some type of group. Now, if Greg Volk were here, he would have all these. He's a master and remembers all the names normally of these groups. And we have the EU group. And I know there's even an Electric Universe group that sort of met in England. Sometimes they're motivated and done and organized by people who are of the EU community, talk and coordinate with those people, Walt Thornhill and Dave Thornhill and Dave, oh my God, Dave Talbot? Yeah, Dave Talbot and Walt Thornhill. Those are the two main people, and I think probably Dave Talbot is more that they talk to and try to arrange maybe a real Electric Universe gathering. So we're having one this summer at the Florida Atlantic University here in Boca Raton. If you haven't heard of it, it's like over 30,000 students go there, so it is not small. It was founded in 1960 by, believe it or not, I think it was the vice president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, I think 1961. It's grown quite a bit. It's got really nice facilities. Of course, that's my hometown, so where I'm living right now, so it makes it easy for me to do it. But anyways, my thoughts are, for instance, if we were to do the West Coast again, maybe we need to hook up with the Tesla Tech people again, so that we would have more people. Maybe we would, one of the things I'm thinking to do is to talk with Dave Talbot and say, look, Dave, we're willing to dedicate part of our conference to Electric Universe people so they can be there. And maybe even Tesla Tech. Also, I'm thinking about, should we have people from the bigger YouTube channels, and maybe they would like to present. I think it's just a different world out there. I know Dissident is out there. Again, if Lori Gardee is a person who, in fact, is someone who has been working with other groups as well. And I think that may help us as well, is to have a conference where we would, just because we're the CNPS, we have the ability and the know-how to do real in-person conferences. That's really my job. It's pretty much 100% on me. But it's not that hard to do today because there's lots of facilities just online. People can pay online, et cetera, et cetera. Well, maybe what we need to do is start thinking about the CNPS, saying, okay, we are going to make an effort to talk with the EU people, for instance, and have some of those people at our conference, so that it's more of a big umbrella. And then there are even bigger things I'm going to get to. Right now it's we're 20 minutes in. I wanted to lay down my ideas and everything, and I wanted to. I have some really other radical ideas, much more radical than this when it comes to support. But I'd like to make the idea is, here's the first question for everybody. Let me get to the banners, and I can type this out. How I'm going to type this out now. Typing. Here I'm typing this out. And this is a really good question. And I've literally, again, before I put it up, I've literally thought about this for the last year. And so much so, I've almost called some of the people I know to basically say, okay, how far do we push this? How far can we push it? And I mean real far. But let's take a look at this, and here's the question. How far do we go to include dissidents in science? Well, that's not even good. I'm going to edit that. Dissidents in our meetings. That's even better. Save. I'll put that up there. That's what happens when you do things live. I'm not doing slides, folks, because slides on this new system with StreamYard doesn't work so well. So how far do we go to include dissidents in our group? I mean, the ones that I was talking about, Electric Universe, Tesla Tech, Common Sense, the other group as well. There's some groups even in England, even some of the YouTube channels. That's sort of easy to do, but how far do we go? Do we include people who have who talk about science, who believe the Earth's much younger? We have numerous members in the Common Sense group. If you don't know anything about the Common Sense group, they have a lot of creationists there. Now, I'm not here again to talk about religion. I'm talking about people who have a certain belief. They get together and talk about science. The people who are creationists in our group, they don't talk. We don't have papers on creationism. What we have papers on is science. And maybe in their groups they'll have papers on carbon dating and how carbon dating may in fact be wrong. I'm not here to judge. I'm saying, how far do we go? Because if you think about it, if you draw a line somewhere, you're always censoring. And if you have the idea, and I'm thinking myself, we could have a huge conference. We could have a conference with all what people call conspiracy theories and let people go nuts with them. Flat Earth Society, conspiracies that 9/11 was an inside job, whatever it is, have the ability and have it talk science, have it talk evidence, but give people foreman, because that's what we have on the internet anyways. If we're meeting on the internet, the way the internet works is that everybody out there says, Einstein's wrong, here's my idea. Oh, I have a new model. Like my father and I are working on our book. We're going to, finishing it up for this year to launch it here in Boca Raton. We're going to have a book launch, the whole thing. That's our idea. Where can we talk about it? Well, we have the CNPS. Well, what if you want to talk, maybe it's the Earth expansionists. Maybe those people all want to talk just about Earth expansion when they come to our, that's another thing. Should it be different? So what I'd like to do is involve, I've got people here in the waiting room. I've got James King, Francis, Ian Cohen, Michael's there, Richard Jesh. If you're interested, of course, in joining us, you can come to live.naturalphilosophy.org. I think I've got that somewhere. Well, I thought we did. Let me edit this one then. With these banners, we don't always have them. So let me show this. So if you are through the YouTube and you want to come into our waiting room is you just go to live.naturalphilosophy.org. And you can come into our waiting room. We have room for 10 people. I see we've been up to 29 to 30 people. I want to thank everybody. I scheduled this time, which means that on YouTube, both on my Dissident Science channel, hello subscribers, and also the CNPS, which I'm filling in today, that in fact having it scheduled gives people and literally has a countdown, and that helps. So if you are, one of the things I encourage everybody to do is to have a YouTube or Google account, have yourself subscribe to both Dissident Science and all the other channels, the CNPS channel, and you can come in through that. You'll be alerted, and then once you're alerted, then you can come in. So I do want to thank everybody who's here. We have 15 people from Dissident Science, my subscribers. Hey, I know, again, if you just joined us, I'm filling in. I'm one of the officers for the CNPS. I'm filling in for Franklin. We're using this, I use this on what I call Science Fridays for Dissident Science, so I welcome everybody from Dissident Science channel. There's 15 of you. Hello, and also 13 from YouTube channel from John Chappelle, which is probably more of our people. So I'd like to have anybody who would like, if they raise their hand in the waiting room who would like to address this whole idea. How far do we go? Is it the case that we would be able to grow? Now listen to some of the positives about this. Let's just go completely nuts, okay? Completely nuts. Let's say we would have a Dissident Science conference. Everybody's included. Flat Earthers included. Of course, Flat Earthers, of course, was invented. It's a game that they're playing, but who cares? They can they can come in. Maybe there's other people who don't subscribe to evolution. There's other people who are creationists. But if we had an umbrella and we had a conference, a big one, where we would have subgroups that were there and have a main room, and that in that main room we would have people from each of the areas, and then we would have debates between them. What we would say is, look, if you think something, if you've got enough people who believe the Earth's flat, or if you've got enough people that believes there are UFOs, if you have enough people that believe Einstein's wrong, if you have enough people that believe that the universe is electric, if you have enough people who are working in their garage looking for energy, ways to get energy, why not put them all together? The moment we say you can't and you can, there's two things that happen. We're censoring, and we're also having. I'm sorry about the dog. Morena speaks Portuguese. A dog. Anyways, what I would say is that we would then not only grow, but we would cross-fertilize. So what happens is people who come in for one thing, electric universe, may not be so much into expansion tectonics, and they happen to see expansion tectonics. And I know that has happened at our conferences. There are people who've come up to me from EU and secretly said hey, Dave, I'm now subscribed to the idea that there's Earth expansive. So hands, please, from our audience who would like to address this. I don't think anybody wants to talk about this. But let me see how about in our comments what we have. Exclude flat Earth advocates. Well, one of the reasons we may exclude them would be because it is literally a joke, right? I mean, it's not a joke in the sense of what they are saying, but what happens is I'm going to be doing my next YouTube Dissident Science on that, basically to give you the story, and those who are on my YouTube channel will see this because I'm going to be recording it. One of the reasons, again, because I'm out of a studio. But basically what happened is I have inside information from people who do know the people who started the flat Earths. That was done as a joke, just like crop circles were done by people who wanted to pull people's legs. And so their whole idea was to see how far they could go. Could they get people to follow it? How far? So it was an experiment in psychology. Now what happens, unfortunately, is mainstream science takes that and uses it against people like us who have actually legitimate gripes against cosmology. The Big Bang's wrong, relativity is wrong, the universe could be much more electric than we think, and it is, in fact. The Earth's expanding. This plate tectonics is right, that you can throw out all of particle physics pretty much since 1930. So it's been weaponized against us, and that's what I have as one of those people who, how do you say, one of the, well, I lost my train of thought. But anyways, that's the idea. So yeah, there's two really, okay, let me put it this way, in my opinion, and I'm discussing, again, raise your hand or let me know if you want to be talking about this subject, because we have people here, not just me. Maybe I'll bring up, yeah, I see Ian's got his hand up, but one of the things is, there's a good and a bad about having the flat Earth. The flat Earth would certainly bring attention to the organization or a conference that we would do that would be all-inclusive. Now, I know bad news. Let me put it this way. We're not at a point where we have to worry about ruining our reputation. Everybody says, well, you can't do these things because, they'll think we're crazy. They already think we're crazy. What do you? I would say to many of you who think like flat Earth is crazy, I would say to many of you that people in mainstream science, the idea that the Earth is expanding, that we have to throw out quarks, neutrinos, the Higgs boson, and the W and Z particles, all those things, the anti-quarks, all of those things are probably more offensive than the idea that the Earth is flat. So yeah, it's a risk, but the whole thing is to grow. The whole thing is to bring in people. So I'm going to bring in Ian. You're there, so I'm going to bring you up here and add you in. Get you I think you're muted. There you go.
I've just unmuted myself.
Hey, Ian, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's a nice bright day here. Okay, David and everybody. I have mixed feelings on this. Of course, I sort of see both sides. But I do, I do want to avoid censorship and deciding a priori
Sure.
what is. And on the other hand, I do conceive that, we are, or many of us are, I'd like to think that I am, using the true conventional scientific method to look at phenomena in physical science. And maybe we've come to the conclusion, I humbly believe I've come to the conclusion, using correct scientific principles, that conventional physical theories and cosmological theories are incorrect. And you've mentioned some of them.
Sure.
Now,
sure.
But, there are people who believe in astrology, or you mentioned creationism, or you mentioned flat Earth, but we have a lot of people who believe in geocentrism. And some of those people are very much against the flat Earth people, but they're very much in favor of geocentrism,
The crazies call the other crazies. I mean, that's what the perception is, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's very difficult to argue with these people. I mean, I'm even slightly skeptical about whether all the flat Earth people have the tongue-in-cheek.
No, not all of them do now. Not all of them. In fact,
exactly.
That was one of the goals of the people who started. And again, I have inside information. One of the goals was to see, can we get this going? And a lot of them thought, who were starting this, that this thing would die. But of course, we know almost anything on the internet. And not only that, you have trolls, and this is what is a good definition for those people who are older who don't know what trolls are. Trolls, there's a lot of members that I would say, Ian, that are who say they are there, but they're also trolling. It is tongue-in-cheek, but eventually, do you get actually really people who are there? But yeah, I agree. So there are probably some people there who believe it.
But I'd say you do have some of them who believe it. And those people, some of them are quite voluble. I mean, it's very difficult to argue with them. They have an argument for everything. They could dismiss what you think is convincing argumentation and so on. And that applies to all criteria. I mean, you talked about the conspiracy theories as well. And I mean, I like to have an open mind on these matters. I often say to people, oh, well, it's possible that this is so.
Sure.
But I will not believe it unless I have, quite definite scientific evidence.
Sure.
I'm not closed. But I don't know if that means that we should allow all these people into the, now I hesitate to say this, but into the forum, because, it does sort of blur the distinction between what we're doing, which is really scientific. It's almost conventional scientific, but we just believe that what is called conventional science has gone down the wrong road. Blurring that with every other idea, that exists. I mean, I think really for the latter, you should have a society just discuss all ideas, conspiracy theories, and completely conceived theories that against the mainstream, as against what we are doing, which is actually more, I believe, more orthodox than the.
Well, absolutely, it has to be. No, I mean the truth is we're the conservative science. We're the conservative science group, because the other, if you really listen. If you take the time to listen to something like one of the greatest interviews was with David, maybe somebody in the the comment area. The people who are online can give me a help. But there is a video that Dr. Alexander Unseker interviews a Nobel Prize winner who introduced something that I guess
just excuse me for 2 minutes,
yeah.
please. I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, no problem. Let me just bring you down here. But one of the things is there's a video of Alexander Unseker interviewing David somebody who has a Nobel Prize in particle physics, and if you listen to him, it sounds way more new age, way more modern than the way we talk. I mean, if you listen to what my father and I talk about our particle model, we're talking about what light is. We're talking about what is white light? How does it get into a rainbow? We're still back in a long way away from where it sounds like modern physics is. So the whole idea that we are, the modern, and then they're sort of stuck in the mud is actually contrary. And then, in fact, we know more about science. For instance, Dr. Edward Dowdy knows much more about general relativity than, of course, Kip Thorne, who is one of the last people who actually claims to be a person who makes a living off of relativity from Caltech. So do we have anybody else in our waiting room? You can put your hand up or send me, let me see if I have a private chat. Anybody here letting know? But again, we are talking today about how far do we go to gather everybody into a big tent to let people know. Now, again, the idea of having a big open conference, I mean, the way I would look at it is this. You would have a big conference for all of these things. Let's just take it to the extreme. All the people who have conspiracy, UFO, our side of it, more serious side of science, new models, that kind of stuff. And then we would have a main room. We'd have proceedings, and you can't get into those. And we would have, of course, when you have lots of people, you can't have everybody talk to everybody. That's one of the problems as we grew as an organization. People come to our, I used to talk to everybody. It was so great. And I tell people, yeah, these small conferences are great because you get to sit in front of everybody, and everybody gets to hear you, and I get to hear everybody, and we have a great interaction. But when let's say have a big conference, and it had Tesla tech people working in garages, free energy people, all of these people, EU, CNPS, and other, even common sense. They then could have their satellite conference room, and there they can talk about how the Earth's only so many thousands of years old. They can give papers on it, and they have their judgment amongst themselves. What we do have, that's happening anyways. No one's had the guts to put that together in a real conference, and no one has the guts. And one of the things about how our organization is that we are a big umbrella. We are not exclusively EU. My dad and I's particle model does tell you exactly with our model what's electric in the universe and what isn't. Even tells you what's hybrid about that. But it doesn't. We still have people who have great disagreements in our group. So the question is, can we do that? Can we actually have that, and will that grow our group? I mean, will it? So I think that's something for all of us to think about. But only Ian was talking about it. I know there's a lot of people who. I know one of the biggest things is the flat Earth, right? I think you have to remember, you would not structure, I'm going to say this again, the idea of this conference is you'd have a main room, and only the best of the papers, and not only that, we would have a committee made of all the subgroups, and they would have to accept those. We would have to say, okay, if there's a big enough audience, we would have somebody talk about it, and we would have them, have an argument. Here's another reason to have flat Earth. I know who here is saying no. I do have a good reason. Another good reason, where people saying not the flat Earth. I agree with him. Okay, like Roger Anderton. Roger Anderton is a person who does amazing work against relativity. Says they would be confirming we are crazy. No, what we would have, and here's an idea. If we were to have those people, if we were to have this conference and announce it to everybody and to organize this, let's say we would do it for 2021. It gives us some time. One of the things, Roger, if you're still there, would be is that we would show the world that we would give arguments against this. So what would happen is we would have a main room, and if there's enough flat earthers there, we would say, okay, you get one 45-minute talk, and then maybe a half an hour talk for a half an hour debate, because that would really be great. Because in the main room, you'd have this person talk, a person talk about expansion tectonics, how that's better than plate tectonics. Somebody who has a really great new model, which we think it is, talk about their model. Somebody from EU, some from CNPS, somebody from Tesla Tech. And each of those talks would be chosen, and there would be at least 30 minutes for discussion. At that point, we can even face the flat earths and say, look, guys, we know this is a joke. You're just doing this for a ruse. Tell me otherwise. And then we could literally debunk it. So eventually, some of those conspiracies or some of those groups we will disarm them in some sense. So that is one of the reasons. Also, I'll give you a good example of how that was when we had Tesla Tech, and we had a joint session between the Tesla Tech, which are sort of people who tinker in the garage, really great, amazing machines. I mean, these things are really great, and they're trying to figure out. And they said we need theory people to help. Well, they have their own language about how they talk about these things, and they talk about the ether, and they talk about energy as if it was real, and all these things. And we had, they talk about gravity in a different way. And so when we met, I sort of arbitrated again. I end up doing those things, but I was in the audience. I said, "Wait a minute, hold on, everybody, hold on. Let's talk about this." And one of the things that came out of it is that when we slowed down and had some real process to how we talk to each other, that we can actually make progress where perhaps people are behind. I'll give you a great example. All those people who love EU, well, 10 years ago, guess what? They did not believe Einstein was wrong. As a group, they are now talking about that very openly and regularly. Also with expansion tectonics, I believe they are also looking at that. So if it's if you are again, thinking about what does this all mean, we would want to be the organization that allows the human race scientifically and with principle be able to get together and talk, and that these subgroups would allow those groups to come in, the creationists talk about science perhaps that they think is related to that. And then of course you would have sessions. The way I would do it is the session in the morning are sessions, let's say it was for 4 days during the week, 4 days like we did have Wednesday through Saturday. Every morning session was everybody in the main room. There were no small sessions going on. And then the afternoon you'd have the breakout session, and then some continue in the big room as well. And the idea then would be, okay, everybody's going to have to listen to that, and we would have arguments for and against, etc. So that would be the idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's pretty crazy sounding, but I think it could be pulled off. I wish Greg Volk were here. Greg, if you're listening, hey, give me a phone call. Let's talk about this. Not a bad idea. I mean, common sense people can have it, and there are a lot of people who are, have that, how do you say, those directions. So anyways, that's an idea. Okay, James Keene, Ian's here, but I don't think he's sitting down. Michael, I know we've talked before. It was Richard, Jess, Cornelius. I mean, again, I think I would like to have everybody here who's listening in or who is listening in the recording to think about this and think about the concept of what this is. I think maybe I can even make a pitch for this, maybe even come up with it, even talk to a few leaders about that. Do you think that would be worth it? That would be a question. Send me an email, write me in a comment. Okay, there we go. James Keene. There's somebody here. James, how are you, James?
Hello, how are you? Just a few random thoughts. I noticed that you're concentrating on big meetings, but what we might, and groups, other groups, the tester group and the others that you mentioned. It might be beneficial also to explore in individuals versus groups. Like within the so-called mainstream physics community, there are a lot of debates about what is going on and what is real and not real, and what is correct in terms of physical models and so forth. So that I don't think we should ignore that. I even thought that of the top 50 universities, there's a website which I featured in my in a recent video, excuse me,
Right.
that I put out, of the top 50 physics departments. I thought of going down that list of physics departments and getting their Twitter link if they have one, or email addresses, and directly contact these departments. And I also have recommended that people use aliases, because some of the people in the mainstream physics community might not want to present some of their dissident ideas, if you will, because they might be fired. Like we have the recent example of the University of Vancouver professor whose contract was terminated after she reported a study in which polar bears were doing good contrary to climate warming propaganda. And so it's also, we in this look at individuals, we might focus a lot on students. Are you being taught to properly in physics departments to properly prepare you for 21st century physics advances? And you've already mentioned, I think, that the people who are financially independent, like, for example, retirees, well, they can't be fired. So there's another group of individuals. But along the lines of what Ian Cohen was just saying, in this forum here, under your leadership, David, he was pointing out that we're more or less conventional in terms of wanting to use the scientific method to explore these issues in science. And so we shouldn't exclude contacting or attempting to contact individuals, and perhaps have a place where they could publish some of their work even under an alias or pen name, at least temporarily, to avoid being fired or not being promoted in their physics department and so forth. So basically, my message here today in response to this important topic is holding big meetings is one way to go to increase the group, as you point out. But another way to go, rather than big meetings, is to contact individuals and use the internet, as you are now doing in these forums, to invite them to come and discuss their ideas.
No, I think that's.
I guess that's it.
Okay, no, I think that's absolutely great. I'm going to mute you. Well, I guess you're okay. You don't have feedback. But no, I think that's absolutely amazing idea. The question then would become, okay, how do we get them here? What do we do? Where do we get their work together? That kind of stuff. And no, there was another person, but I like that. I'm glad we had this recorded, because I'm going to come back to what you said, because I think there's a lot there.
Well, we might also mention that you've talked about on the CNPS site, there's an opportunity for people to publish papers. Let people know that they can publish papers under a pen name. Right. And or an alias, as we might call it in internet parlance. The pen name is the old-fashioned pre-internet term for the same thing. So that the ideas can be there, and if there was a mechanism where you could post comments to each paper, I don't know whether that's true now, but if there's a mechanism where that could be done, then that discussion could go on a paper-by-paper basis, and people would choose the topics in physics that they're interested in to look at. So in other words, one approach, which I don't know really how beneficial that would be, to hold big meetings. The other approach might be how to attract individuals.
Mm-hmm. Sure. 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 No, I think that's very. Here's a person, N, who is in our chat, who put down the Institute of Art and Ideas has a model you could use. Separate tents, all filmed, put online in intervals of a week or so, and interviews with the main speakers. So I guess what it is we're looking at how do we actually implement something, right? I mean, I think we all have the idea that we need to be inclusive. We got to try to use, of course, some way to judge these. We can't just let anything happen. But how do we? One of the things is that we contact people, right? We have a reach out. Is it the case that we're just not doing it? I think one of the things you're talking about is we're just not doing it that way. And I think one of the things you said is very important, and that is where we can put papers and then discuss them. Now, there are several places that people can put papers today. So either we would have to choose one of those. I guess there's a number that people publish on, and if those places already have comments, then that would work out because we could have it organized here. But I guess what we would need to do, James, is how do we sell what we have? Because obviously we're asking people, you can talk about it. We have proceedings, for instance, that they can publish in anonymously. Do we have our own place for these papers, or do we use a public forum? Because I'm not sure. I'm stupid when it comes to these things, so I don't know a whole lot about the ones that like Academy or whatever. There's a couple places that people put physics reviews. I don't remember, but can you publish anonymously in these areas with your papers? Do you know, James?
Well, overnight, anyone can put up a blog, which allows comments, and the blog post could be papers. Okay.
But I mean, for per paper, isn't it? Maybe I think what we need to do is investigate. I can investigate. So the idea would be what you're saying is a person who may be a student, or maybe even somebody like Anonymous here, who is. I know there's been a couple of people here who actually don't want to use their names, and I actually discussed with one guy. Maybe this is a guy in Australia, doesn't want his name out there. Maybe they're a professor in somewhere. And they may not even be a professor in that area of science, right? I mean, if you're a professor of English literature at a well-known university and you don't believe your physics colleagues and you've been working in that area as a hobby, maybe this would be a way to do it. So anonymous publishing. So we would have to, I guess, set up a system, James, that would, once we contact, that we already have a place for them to land, right? We need to have some plan.
That makes sense, David. Yes, that does make sense. But like again, also the use of the term dissident and also woke science. I looked up these words in the dictionary just to be sure I had an understanding of what they really meant. And last night, in preparation for today, and
right.
Woke is sort of like, it seems to be, like rebelling against authority.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily, I think, the message that's going to attract people. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In other words, we need to provide the kind of leadership that a mother cow provides to her calf, attracting, by providing something for people, using attraction. Also dissident. Well, in mainstream physics, in almost any topic you want to look at, there is disagreements among mainstream physicists.
Absolutely.
So here's a huge group of people, mostly with PhDs in physics or related fields, who are possible, persons to expand the group, because that was part of your message, how to expand the group. And so anyway, I'm working on a little project, and if someone wants to help, it'd be great. I want to go through this top 50 universities, click on each one, find out their contact information, if they have a Twitter account. If so, they could be contacted directly and see, what kind of interest one can find. Trying to attract people, because as Ian Cohen was saying, you're not going to convince people who have a strong religious belief, let us say, in certain things. For example, in my work, I call it continuous space-time theory a religious creed, because it has no practical foundation other than superstition and tradition. You're not going to necessarily attract them just by saying, "Oh, you're wrong," But somehow, this sort of trying to find individuals and fit them in may be useful. I guess I'm getting a little bit incoherent here, so my idea is not that well organized. So I'll sort of sign off for the moment and listen.
Okay. All right. No, but thank you so much. I think that's absolutely great. In fact, I encourage you to do that. What I would say is we would need to find a place where we could actually have the papers and discuss, because the problem with my library's gone. it's packed, but I usually like to go back and grab my a book. But when we have proceedings, even those proceedings are great. People can read them, but then interaction is sort of left on your own. There's an email address, and you can't do much. Now, there are a couple of ways to do that. Again, is to do research on the places where you can publish papers. The only thing I worry about any of that is that the moment any of those places discovers that we're publishing papers that many consider heresy, and as much as we say the flat Earth's crazy, well, they're going to consider papers that logically show the Big Bang wrong as heresy as well. I would say we need to try to rely on our own. So one of my suggestions would be for us to actually publish the papers in something we already have, and where I'd like to have them all anyways, which is our Wikipedia. The reason is because there's a couple of reasons. One, when you publish in a wiki, and especially because we use the exact same software as Wikipedia, we can put the entire paper there. It has latex math equations, so we can make the math look really good. Of course, we can have all the figures there. I do believe it has every page has a discussion area, so you can go into that page and have the discussion, and all that software is already done. There's one real important thing about us doing it. No one's going to tell us we can't do it anymore. And here's the big problem, and I know it's a problem, and that is the moment we would start publishing, and then the next thing we get fame of publishing heresy, then we start getting banned. Well, what happens to all the papers and the discussions we just had? Where do those go? So one way that I would see it is we would use our Wikipedia. A person can write their paper there, and in fact, they can write it, and people can watch them write it. I don't know if we have a way to. We do have a way. That is, it isn't open right now. And then once it's done and it's presented either online or at a regular conference, people could then read it and comment on it. But I think that's a great idea. It's, again, we have to have a place to land. And I think probably having a in-person conference continuing once a year, and also having this online forum would also work out. I've also absolutely looked into very seriously about doing our conference online, meaning for the same 4 days we would do this using this method, and that people then would be able to show their slides and do everything via the internet, and actually have people pay for it. But the problem is the technology that we are doing now and streaming doesn't work as well as we like. We do crash when we try to do slides, but I like the idea. I like it, James, the whole idea of getting people and getting them in contact, but I think we need to resolve some problems ahead of time. And then also, I think the idea of having an in-person conference, maybe even every 2 years, and really have a big umbrella with sub areas, and have people be able to plan it longer. I still think there's probably some merit to that. So, all right. Continuing discussion here. Again, David de Hilster filling in. I want to thank all my subscribers. I see we have 15 of my subscribers from Dissident Science here. And also we have 11 people from John Chappelle. So welcome all of you. I'm in here for Franklin, and I've decided to take it in a little different direction, which I think has been interesting, because we usually, those who have not been here, usually the discussions are really very detailed about certain concepts, or general about concepts such as energy or the electron, or moving charges, or people giving a paper and then talking about it. So Franklin, who will be back next week, and we will continue. So I welcome everybody. Comments I have on. So if you have any questions or comments to make, if you are in the waiting room and want to make any comments or talk about something, let me know. That's also says shockwaves. So energy are electrons. What about photons? Well, one of the things is we talk a lot about in the CNPS is energy. We just got to be careful, folks, because if you look at the units for energy, what's the units for energy? Exactly. It's a million different things, and the reason is because energy is a concept. If you think about it, I would say a vast majority of those people who are very active in the CNPS will all tell you the same, because if you think about it, energy is a concept, folks. To say something like energy, for instance, here, energy is charged particles. I think that's what he means, particles. Yeah, spelling, probably not his native language, but no problem, because I even do that and I speak English. Energy is charged particles. Well, again, energy, what is it? It's a general, if you have a model of the universe and you have everything in it, there is no energy. You have moving stuff in it, and this is what an electron is, and it moves this way, and this is what a magnetic field is. Hopefully we'll have some physicality to it. So saying energy is charged particles, you would get challenged by many people. And again, if you really think about it, if you take the time, everybody listening, to really think about the word energy, you will soon realize that here, I mean, the simplest one is like my father says, here you go, here's my hand, put energy into it. And you give me mass, wait a minute, that's mass. I think the way I try to look at energy is it's something that we describe as useful, that does useful work. That's the way I sort of look at energy. So the energy in your gas tank or in the batteries in your electric car have so much potential that we can use to make movement that's going to be useful to us. I mean, that's the way I sort of look at it. But this whole thing that the whole thing is energy, again. Where are you seeing these comments? I'm not seeing these comments. These comments are in two places. Good question. Those two places. Those comments are in fact found here. I will put this up. YouTube. If you go to youtube.naturalphilosophy.org or youtube.dissidentscience.com, those will take you to the YouTube channels. On the YouTube channels, you should see there's a chat. If you don't, let me see here. Let me put this up here for you, and maybe I can show it to you. Let me go to a YouTube channel. Here we go, live chat. Let me put that on play. I don't know how far back this is. It's probably way far back. Let me get it up and running here. I'm going to show you on my phone here what it looks like, so those who don't know about this. This is new technology to a lot of people, so please bear with me. I'll go to this one, in fact. Oh, no. Is that going live? There we go. Okay, pressing live here. Now this is down. There are 19 people. If you can see this, there we go. And you can see there's a live chat. And at the bottom there, so shockwaves is energy. You can see that. That's on a phone. So a lot of people are on a phone. So that's one of the ways you can see it. Again, I'm talking to people, those people who are at Dissident Science. A lot of you are younger. The CNPS is made up of a lot of retirees who do amazing work, folks. They're, age has nothing to do with amazement. A lot of these people have very young minds. But anyways, you can see the chats and respond there. We will often broadcast to YouTube and to Facebook. I know when I'm personally hosting these Saturday morning chats, what happens is Saturday morning chats with CNPS, I will include and broadcast live to my channel. But normally I don't do that because the people who subscribe to my channel aren't necessarily subscribing to what's going on in the CNPS. I do recommend all of my subscribers to subscribe to the CNPS channel for those who are really into it. So anyways, again, our whole topic today is talking about how far and how many people do we include in our organization. The CNPS is a little bit more unique than I think most organizations. I know you EU people say the entire universe is electric, and so everything is subsumed under that. That is a great opinion, and go for it. I always say, show me the entire universe is electric. But of course, again, that's a priority. That is the prerogative of everybody. But the idea is, if we have our CNPS conference, the thing is we can include people from Tesla Tech. We include people from the EU. We include people from Common Sense. All those people, we do have people who are there. So anyways, any more discussion? I know, Ian, you were discussing a little bit with me about the unification, who do we include? I know talking with James Keene, he's saying, let's contact people and get them here, having papers and discussions. In fact, one of the things we could do for those people who are part of the CNPS, who are here, who are regularly here on Saturdays, I know that's not my subscribers, but a lot of times there are papers given. But if we do have papers given, or even we can, I'm going to talk to Franklin about this. I think one of the things we could do, James, I'm going to bring you up, James. Here we go. I'm just going to bring you up without asking permission.
Hi.
Here's an idea I just thought of. One of the things we could do on Saturday mornings is require, even if we don't have a person who has a new paper, have sort of a vote, have a group of you guys, of us, say, okay, here's some papers. Let's go over a paper and talk about it.
Excellent idea.
And not only that, we would put that paper, in fact, there's a paper, what we would do is we would put it in our wiki. That's not easy. I have a translation from LaTeX. But if it's in PDF form, someone's going to have to be volunteered to take that paper, cut and paste it, put it in the wiki. It's not that hard. And then we would not only have it and discuss it in a video form, we could put that, and I could make it in the Wikipedia, so we could put the link to the discussion of that paper at the top of the paper, and in every wiki page you have a discussion area. And so then people could discussion.
The wiki platform that you described after I made my previous comment sounds exactly like what I was thinking about. And congratulations on that platform. Let's use it. Now, also, if someone puts a paper on that wiki, they can then contact physics departments through a Twitter, if they have a Twitter address. They can have a whole list of contacts that they will send out information that this study has been published here, and here's a link to it, and so forth. So that not only can a person put a paper on the wiki, but also promote it.
Right,
and
absolutely.
Ideally promote it to individuals that are interested in that topic. Some people are more interested in gravity or in electromagnetism or whatever it is. So that one can target that. And I think that would be attracting interest, because people are going to say, like, for example, I've written to people who have published papers in physics in Science and mainstream journals. And these are folks like you and me. They're flattered that anyone even read their paper. Okay.
Right.
And if you then engage them in some question, you're likely to get an email reply back. And that happened, for example, when the electric dipole moment work was showing that the dipole moment appears to be zero. And the person was saying, well, see, the electron is a sphere. And I wrote the person saying, why do you say it's a sphere? The actual author who was in London. And he said, well, that's what everyone else said. I mean, that was basically his reply between the lines. But anyone that knows geometry, that you can get a zero electron dipole moment with any spinning top of any shape.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a sphere. So that you see, even people who are publishing mainstream stuff, you can engage them in conversations, and maybe they'll come back and read your paper, which might even be a review of their paper, okay, in Physics Review, or some of the mainstream outlets like Science, Nature, Physics Review, other, the Journal of Astrophysics, whatever.
Sure.
So this would be using attraction, because the only way I think a group can increase its numbers is by attracting people.
Right. Absolutely.
Like if we're going to basically imply that people have to rebel against authority and some of the political. Yes, there is censorship. My last two videos emphasize this, that this is, and I even call out what I call the physics cartel, the word cartel being used in the sense of it being a monopoly. And so the only, so I just think, you see, like a meeting once a year is a one-shot event.
Sure.
The kind of publishing or trying to contact individuals is an ongoing effort, you might say. And that's sort of the strategy I'm trying to develop, and I haven't fully developed it yet. I would appreciate the help. Like, for example, if someone wants to email me a list of the Twitter addresses of every single physicist and physics department in the world, I'd love to have that list.
Sure. Well, I think there's two things that would probably have to be done. I'll just leave you up there to have a conversation with, so you don't have to say anything. But I think there's two things that need to be done. One, I already started a new website for natural philosophy. Let's go back even to something you said, Dissident Science Woke, Dissident Science, my channel. Naturalphilosophy.org, there's nothing intimidating about that. In fact, it is a great umbrella under which we can put stuff.
I agree.
That I think it's just a great name. I mean, I remember when we had to pool our money to buy it. I mean, there was a naturalphilosophy.com for $4,000, and I think this was $888. And I said, folks, let's grab this, because there's no organization that could, be the keeper of this term better than us. So here's the way I would say. This is the way I would say. James, there's one thing I'm not liking about this conversation. It means more work for me, and that's not something I necessarily need to have. But one of the things is to take, I'm building a new website that's much simpler, much like if you look at, for instance, sciencewoke.org and you look at naturalphilosophy.org, they're very big difference. It's the natural philosophy is huge. It's a little too big. It's a little bit disorganized. But if we were to make naturalphilosophy.org, the regular site, be a welcoming site, right? Here's what you can do to get your work out. Here's what you can do. We are the Natural Philosophy Organization. We are the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society. So if you have a paper you want to talk about, or you think interesting, or you want to submit, here are the ways you would do it. We have a Wikipedia, and one of the good things is I've argued with Franklin on this, and I think this will give me more on my argument. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying to do the right thing. But we would continue to make an exclusive. You don't leave it open, our Wikipedia. So what it means is there's sort of like, okay, you want to put a paper in, great. Okay, tell us what you want to do. We'll give you a login. You can put it in there. So it's not, a person's going to feel a little bit special, right? You don't want to just like throw it up there. It's one of the problems, I think, with the other sites is that anybody can put them in, it gets lost. Then once you do it, you can say that every person who submits a paper gets to present for an hour with an hour rebuttal online, live, like we're doing today, right? And not only that
sounds okay too. Of course,
and not only that, put it in the proceedings.
Anonymous, but they could turn the camera off and use a pen name or a.
We can even make they can get a voice changer. It's easy to make a voice changer even. So there you go. But
one thing you can do, Dave, is like for example, I would welcome help in getting a list of the email addresses of all the chairmen of departments of physics in colleges and universities in the world, and where those departments or individuals have Twitter addresses, that list too. I'd be willing to share that. So David, you might make up a list of things that people can do to help you.
Right.
I need this data compiled. I need that data compiled. Will someone please compile it and email it to me, even if you only get half the job done? It's better than having zero of the job done. These are contacts because every event, for example, could be with a mass email mailing for these Saturday chats could be done if such an email list was beyond just the members of Natural Philosophy Org, but included mainstream, what we're calling mainstream people, but recognizing that within this body of people, there are many differing opinions. And so some of those we would call dissidents, but they may not want to come out and actually identify themselves as such because they might get fired from their job, like the lady who wrote about the polar bears. So,
right.
In other words, Dave could help the whole cause, I think, not necessarily instantly right now, but perhaps at a future time, listing the kinds of data he might need to. It's just going on the internet and compiling this in, say, a text file. And then a text file could be sent by email. And if it's a text file, it can contain no viruses or malware, such as like a doc file. Avoid everything like my Microsoft Office files. They all can contain embedded programs, malware programs. At any rate, the current members can help. Like, for example, if anybody, including David or anyone else, as I get to work on creating this email list, and frankly, I'm doing it to promote my work. But it's exactly in the model that David was talking about. Anyone else who publishes a paper in the wiki would want to promote their paper as well. And only by that kind of interaction would get you collaborators, like people working with you in a particular project. Okay.
Let me just before you keep going on that. Let me just give you a few realities. Unfortunately, one of the things that happened when the internet first came out, and especially when it came to physics, and this is the reason is because of we dissidents. No, it's hard to, is that they are learning to hide or not list emails at all anymore, or even phone numbers, because what happens is we have the ability. One of my specialties is
oh my goodness, that's terrible. That shows you how powerful the physics cartel is.
Well, it's not so much that as for much spam, and it's not only just us, it's anybody who wants to sell them anything. So one of the things is that's called scraping the internet for information. That's huge. These lists are worth a lot. What it's really going to have to come down to is more of a concerted effort, almost like a going door to door canvassing for an election. We're going to have to basically try to find those who we can contact and spend the time to get to them, because it's not easy. In fact, this has a terminology that we are taught, for instance, at our company, which we are a data company, and we have to know every trick under the book. One of the biggest ones is called social engineering. You know what social engineering is, James? That's when James calls up a physics department and uses tricks to try to talk to somebody who they're trying to talk to and can't get to. Let's say I'm Dave de Hilster and I want to get a hold of Kip Thorne to try to see if I can get him on, and talk to him about general relativity and how it's wrong, maybe to date him. Well, his contact information is going to be well guarded, not necessarily because of mainstream and conspiracy things. It's just because of being in the public light, and how do you say, security. So what happens is you are taught in corporations, so breaches can happen by a phone call, me calling up James Keene and saying, hey, I'm with your sister, she's like dying, I'm going to be, and I need this information, and if we don't get it, then we're not going to be able to take her to the hospital, she could possibly lose her life. Those kinds of things. And then, or they'll get to know you, become friends with you on the phone, give you phone calls for 4 or 5 times. So this is called social engineering. So the idea that we can go out and easily get this stuff is not, unfortunately, it's not that easy today because of that. So many people
I went to David Upsinger's site, his blog site, wanting to contact him to start a conversation with him because he seemed like a very smart guy. And there's no contact. You can't even send a text message to him. There's no email address. There's no way to contact this individual on his own blog. Amazing.
Yeah, but it's not really more because they're trying to keep away people who are going to disagree with them. It's just more of the way the world works today. If you're not a person that's into, talking and all that stuff, then, interacting, and you want to keep that away, then it's just not as easy as you think. But I think that's great. So I think I'm going to bring you back down again. Thank you very much. I think one of the things is let's come up with a way to do this. So here's some of the things I'm sort of taking away from these conversations. That these Saturday mornings, even if we don't have a person with a new paper, we could, as a collective, choose one, make sure that it's on the Wikipedia, it's there so that people can continue the discussion offline. We get that paper, if let's say it's a new paper or a paper, even an old paper, we get that, have somebody has to put it in the Wikipedia. We'll have people that can do that. Then we talk about that. Everybody can read it ahead of time. We'll read it. A person can discuss it. Maybe there'll be one person who presents it. And then, kind of that thing. And I think that kind of forum will get people interested in doing it. Then there's a couple of things. If we have enough of them, we can keep it in a sense that these papers would be published in our proceedings. And I think one of the things is James Keene, that he was talking about, maybe we could include things that are not necessarily what we include now. I mean, why do we exclude somebody who's talking about polar bear research that has some real, data behind it, or somebody who says, hey, climate change or the temperatures and changing the way we think, can we publish somewhere? Yeah, that's a way to expand it without having every 2 years a big tent, big tent conference, having these papers, and then have them in proceedings. So I'm going to bring up Ian, who's waving, I guess. Were you waving, Ian?
I noted you had a dog earlier. I have a cat which has been it's crawling on me.
Yeah,
and I apologize for having to leave there. It was a neighbor actually about some work, so I had to speak to her.
I don't know. You've been following the conversation, right? Though
I have been following the conversation. I just missed maybe about 5 minutes. At that time I had to go, but I don't. Actually, one thing is. The word dissident has some rather negative connotations in Ireland at the moment, actually.
Sure.
I think I've been the butt of it myself because dissidents are political dissidents, or those people who are against the current tentative peace initiative in Northern Ireland between the two communities.
Sure.
And we call these dissident Republicans or something, or against that.
Sure.
They're causing a lot of trouble. So there's a negative connotation with that.
Well, woke has the same negative connotation. In fact, we have a member, I won't say his name because I love his work. I've loved his work for a couple decades. I promote his work and talk about his work constantly, and he doesn't want to even be part of the word woke, because what happens is you have politicians trying to demonize like the woke movement, and then they try to get the people who they on their side to make anybody who says is woke is what we call, it's a signal to say that these people are socialists. I don't know. communists. I'm not here, but that's we have literally people who will not have almost left the group because of we have the science woke. Because everything that there's a Whorf hypothesis in linguistics. I got a master's in linguistics, and that is the word retarded, which we use today as a bad word. Oh, that person's retarded, was something that was made as a neutral word when it was introduced, because it was for people who had problems, right? People who are mentally less capable. And so they said, we're going to use retarded because that's a nice word. No, it doesn't have a bad connotation. Well, guess what? It does. It's the same way with other words in the language. So people will usurp those things for two reasons. Either they're using it to discredit somebody, or they're using it as a weapon to make an entire group, not legitimate. So, like here in the United States, the woke has been taken by the right, those conservatives, as to say, oh, the people on the left are calling themselves woke, so anything woke means is a signal for crazy socialist communists, so I don't want to be involved with woke science. That's, and so, yeah, I think what we need to do is the naturalphilosophy.org is really the neutral kind of thing we have. The science woke is simply taking advantage of a movement of people who are saying, we listen to mainstream. In fact, I have not done this yet, but I have a couple of friends who are interested in talking to me who have a platform of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and there are other platforms with as many as 1 million people who may be interested in me telling them, like, oh, you know how mainstream media is telling us that, like our government here in the United States was telling us for the last 15 years things were going well in the Afghan war, when we just had leaked information telling us that they knew the whole entire time nothing was going well. Well, what's happening is that there is a sense in the world now that people are not going to believe what mainstream says. So they're not going to have a hard time saying, oh, you're telling me that Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he laughs at relativity being wrong, is in fact being an idiot about that, which he is, because if you are a scientist, you could say, yeah, anything can be wrong. So the idea is that we're using that right now, and that gives people who says, oh, I always knew there were problems in science. So that's what that's about. And dissident science is the same kind of thing. So the idea is we can use the naturalphilosophy.org, get a new website, welcome people who want to do their papers in the areas, have people point to science woke. That is, if you didn't know there were problems in mainstream science, go there. That's what that's about. But then have them, you can submit a paper, it's put into the proceedings, it's got to be accepted. That's the other thing too, is I think we're going to have some kind of acceptance group, right? I mean, otherwise people aren't going to, how do you say, feel that it's worth something. What do you think about that, Ian? Like what do they call them? Referees? What do they call them?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly what you're getting at there, David. Perhaps you come back to that. But I think I was saying earlier that it's not so much that we're using alternative criteria to analyze nature. In fact, to be a bit blunt here, and we're trying to cut down a tree maybe, and we have to hit hard. We're actually saying that mainstream has betrayed its own principles, that we want to apply scientific principles correctly. And if one does that, and one has an open mind and does as you say, on the basis that anything in science can be wrong, enter it with an open mind, well, one will inevitably be led to the conclusion that there are various errors which are incumbent in modern interpretations of science. So maybe to get that over quite clearly, and I don't know. I mean, the media. You see, if we talked about this, I think a couple of weeks ago, I might have mentioned bringing some academic people in and into conferences, and you said, well, that had been done before. And it's very hard to convince these people because they've sort of got their mind made up, and they say these people are cranks. But I mean, if you could get a very serious conversation with maybe a moderator who is an experienced broadcaster, and one would make clear that we're actually using scientific principles and we're arguing on that basis. And if a number of venues like that, if a number of events like that could be sort of promulgated, I think it would slowly percolate into the population as a whole. And the population as a whole would actually be from the bottom up. They would force the mainstream scientists to take notice of this and to address these questions.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, but I see what you're saying. But history has shown, and this was the very first time when I first met a dissident myself, or a person who was who showed Einstein wrong. Okay, one of the things I did was to look at the way science works. And has there ever been a time in human history where the mainstream of science at the time, said, "Oh, we're wrong, we'll change"? Believe it or not, I found one book on Newton that actually said that you don't read anywhere, because you only read the rosy side of Newton, right? It said he spent the rest of his days as the head of the Mint of England, which I think was just sort of a position of name, and because it deals with metals and stuff, that was sort of, you help out, and spent the rest of his life arguing his ideas amongst his peers, defending them, actually. See, you don't hear about that now. And the question becomes, and what I have found from people who've been trying that for, like, even John Chappell, what you find is to even find a person is one thing, let alone if a person does come, will anything come of it? Even in mainstream, will mainstream even cover it? And they won't cover it. And so I think what most people have come to the conclusion, Ian, and I've come to the same one, is that what we want to do is grow the movement so that what happens, eventually they're going to have to deal with it, right? It's sort of like, they're going to see it so many times, and you started to see it. In the last 5 and even 10 years, you never saw an article in mainstream science with the word Einstein and wrong together. You do see these now, even though when you read them, they're usually stupid, some tweak somewhere that doesn't mean anything. But there are cracks in the chinks. You got people coming out, but I think, for instance, coming out of the Large Hadron Collider, like Sabine Hossenfelder. You don't see Sabine Hossenfelder doing arguments or trying to get mainstream science to talk about it. She recognizes, and she was immersed in the Large Hadron Collider community on her YouTube channel. You don't see her arguing with people. The only person I've ever seen get close to that has been Alexander Unsecker. And after the interview he did with David, that guy who won the Nobel Prize, and he literally almost rips off his mic at the end and goes away, because he was being only asked questions by Unsecker, who, like us, had very critical, fundamental questions, and was frustrating because he's only used to pontificating. That even Alexander Unsecker, if you were to talk to him, I think he would say, look, it's just not worth it. The efforts are going to be better made trying to attract people who are, like even James said, hey, these people are the professor. I don't know if do you know Cynthia Whitney? She is she told me when I was at the conference, she said, Dave, I asked her, I said, when you tried to apply your thesis on special relativity to Sagnac, light in a circle, right? Light in a gyroscope, he says, and it failed. What did your professor say? You know what she said to me? She said, her professor knows that's true, and he knew it was true. Now the question isn't whether or not you can get that professor to sit down and debate and then have these discussions about it. They know it. I've also seen teachers and people say, literally, who are physics professors. I saw somewhere, I don't know, it was in a YouTube channel, it was in a discussion somewhere, in an article, who literally said, I'm going to now teach you quantum mechanics to his physics class. He says, I don't believe any of it, but I'm required to teach it to you. So I think they're there, and I think the idea is how to deal with that more than to try to convert, Kip Thorne, who makes a living from it. I mean, I think in that, at least in that's a point of view that a lot of us have as well. So
I had one experience shortly before I retired. One of my committees, we were dealing with electromagnetic radiation, and one of the young chaps who joined the committee had been doing some research in University College Cork, and he basically told me that one of his professors had said that he conceived of an ether, it's sort of a classical ether, but it was as much as his job was worth to mention it, so they had to keep it quiet. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, another story is a good friend of mine who's a member of the CNPS, who gave several talks very much in the line of what my father and I did about particle models of color. He was actually showing how color could be particles, right? And anyways, and it was interesting that he was an engineering teacher. He wasn't even a physics teacher. And what happened in his engineering, it was in Brazil, in the Guanabara Bay, the other side of Rio de Janeiro, is a place called Niterói, and it's got a university there, and he was teaching there. He was teaching their kids and engineering students, and he would say, look, we're going to pick a subject like Big Bang, a big idea. And if you pick, let's say, the Big Bang, you have to and are required to get a good grade to look at the pros and cons, no matter what theory it is, no matter what it is. No matter what, which is, I think, an amazingly good assignment. And so he was doing that for years, and he was telling me about it, and 1 year would pass, and he goes, man, and another year passed. And then I literally called him up to say, I'm going to take your story down. I want to write down, what do you do? How do you do it? What have you learned over the years? You're going to be a model for the world. Guess what he told me after 3 years? He says, I can't talk about it anymore. And here's what he told me. He said a third of the students loved the idea. When he gave that assignment, they loved it. They go, wow, this is cool. I always thought the Big Bang was stupid, right? I mean, why would the whole universe blow up out of this one thing? I mean, the average person on the street has that feeling about it. So that, you get a third of his students would say, oh, this is really cool. Then a third of his students would just do the assignment, didn't have I don't care, I'm going to get my grade, right? Then they do the assignment, and they look up stuff, and they don't care. Other third were going to they were going to the other professors and the directors in charge of the engineering department and saying that this teacher was teaching heresy. So that's what's going on in reality. So he had to stop doing it. Another person I met, another story was another guy was a physics teacher in high school. And he was a member. I think he was in one of 2008 to 2010. We used a really old system when we had, this kind of system. It's not live like it is today, but I mean on the internet. It was like what we had, Fuse, right? And he was in there, and he said, I said, well, I said, who are you? And we got into conversation. He said, oh, I'm a physics. Oh no, we talked on the telephone, and he goes, yeah, I'm a physics teacher in high school, and I was teaching kids to question everything. Here's some different ideas. Here we didn't have it, but he would be to say, here, go to sciencewoke.org, wake up your brain to science. Hey, come here, Wikipedia and natural philosophy, they got different ideas. Well, it turned out that he got so frustrated, it was so controversial, that what his recommendation turned from go and fight it, go and fight for truth, don't give in, to, what his answer is to kids now? Don't go into physics, it's a joke. That's where he was painted into a corner. He was painted into that corner. And that's why I think our efforts really need to be on attracting those people who are out there. The majority of the human race, in my opinion, isn't liking modern physics and cosmology. If you went on the street and said, parallel universes, does that make sense? The average person is going to say, no. I mean, in reality, I said physically, no, there's like one universe. That's why we have the word, So I think there's a silent majority out there, but that's just some of my feelings about that. Okay, I've got another person. Did you want to make a few closing statements before I bring up?
One
Sure.
Final point, maybe.
Sure.
Try to be brief. What was it now? Yeah. I mean, we do exist. People who are questioning the current paradigm or consensus of science, and therefore it is appropriate that people learn about our existence. Now,
Sure.
I mean, all this controversy, mainly in the United States, about teaching creationism or intelligent design rather than evolution or something. And, they say, well, no, it's against the First Amendment to the Constitution because it's a religious system. That's the argument against it. But I mean, people believe that. So there's no harm in
talking about it,
telling children that is a country view. Now, we had some controversy in the Giants Causeway. We have an interpretive center there, and in the last few years, and they got into a bit of trouble, actually. I didn't see it in the early days, but in the early days, it appears, from what I've heard, that they had a sort of it's 65 million years old, and it was formed by the solidification of the lava into the basaltic rocks over a short period of time, and you get this columnar shape with hexagonals and so on. And then they had another thing. Well, this was actually created less than 6,000 years ago, and it was an intelligent thing. And they said, well, that's ridiculous. You're giving the same weight from science and from religion. So what they've done now is they've toned it down, but they haven't got rid of it. They said, here's the scientific explanation, and here's another view which is held by certain groups that the world is only, it's so so we could appeal to that I mean, to dismiss us and just say,
sure,
is wrong. You should learn about what we're saying.
Yeah, I think one of the things is we need to do is include, and that is, okay, I mean, here's one of the things I say in my talk that's supposed to come up on Dissident Science that I haven't. I wrote the script, I just haven't recorded because of this mess behind me. But anyways, one of the things I say is, look, if a kid comes up to you in class, if I was a science teacher in high school and they said, I want to show the Earth's flat, I go for it. Because they're going to learn one way or another. And if you shut them off from that, it's like here in the United States, if you call everybody who voted for Trump a deplorable person, they were really, most of them were voting against the Clintons, right? Because they're so corrupt. Again, I'm not here to say, but if you go and then you demonize those people, then what are you doing? I think that's one of the things what we need to say. If you are a person who really believes that there's things were created not too long ago, and you want to be able to investigate it, yes, do it. If you're an electric person, a person in the electric universe, you think everything's electric, do it. We have a model that says, one thing, another person has a model that says another thing. But I think what we need to do is be inclusive, and yeah, we have to have some rules. You can't just go in and stand up and just because you have the right and talk. But I think that's another thing, is not to call people who disagree with you, the idiots or bad people. Okay, I'm going to bring you down here. Oh boy, I got to see. I'm going to get somebody else. I know, James, you had a thought, right? You wanted to say something?
Just briefly, if I may. One project is that one can go to nsf.gov, look for the physics research section, and then look for the grant proposals and the amount of funding that each is getting. Mm-hmm. There you have contacts with the principal investigators, and also one can select projects that are in one's interest, gravity, electromagnetics, whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these, following the concept of follow the money, a lot of these projects are in fact hoaxes, okay? And one topic for these Saturday chats would be for persons to research this reference that I just gave how to get there, nsf.gov on the internet, to select a particular project where they describe what they're doing. I did a video on two CERN projects, Atlas and Alice, showing that these people don't know what they're doing, and it's close to being a hoax. Okay, so that there's sort of a muckraker role there too, and this might get people into trouble or whatever. But follow the money. The other idea is continuing education for physics faculty. Okay, medical people have to take in the specialties, especially have to take continuing education courses to be up to date. That's something that we might want to promote. The last thing that I wanted to mention, what was it? Uh, okay, it's left my mind. So that's what I want to contribute as possible projects. If anyone does this, I'd be interested in receiving their thoughts on particular research projects and how valid they actually are, or is it just an old boys network following the money to basically provide welfare for physicists?
Sure, absolutely. I think that's absolutely another direction we can go. There's a lot of information. I think, that's, we have to continually understand that we're talking to our own audience, and that we must understand. We're not going to be trying to convince these people, right? I mean, we're not. Our goal is not to go out and then convince mainstream necessarily, but it is. I think these kinds of exercises and going and looking at these kinds of things will help those people who are actually more critical thinkers and who may be on the fence with things. So yeah, I think that's another direction to go. But I think in general, because we have 10 minutes left, I do have some comments. I've been looking at them. It's been more discussion than anything. Popping a bit. Oh, look at that. Mr. Grimm is telling me about, yeah, I do actually have a pop guard for this. Those who don't know. Yeah, pop guard is when you say P's, T's, and K's. If you're not in the linguistics, those are called plosives. Plosives. And for us English speakers, we need to have, probably have to buy another one because everything's packed. But yeah, this mic needs a pop guard, meaning like a sponge over the top. But anyways, one of the things I'd like to sort of say here is that we definitely, as some people say, we need to grow the group. We need to make a bigger umbrella to what we are maybe even looking at in our group. I think we have to be careful to not just be only physics, cosmology, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I do my recordings, look folks, when I do my recordings for my videos, this is where my mic is. So maybe I need to just do that. I just like, this is a more of an emotional thing. So anyways, I think this idea of contacting people, getting more people interested, getting and accepting papers necessarily from people in areas that are a little bit outside. Anyways, I think the idea of our group trying to cooperate more, and for all of our groups to say that we need to be open and supportive of somebody. The hardest thing for we dissidents, I think this is the way I need to wrap it up here. The hardest thing for we dissidents is for us, like my father and I we have a model, and every time someone says charge, I cringe, right? Because charge to me is a notational form. It's not a reality. But I have to understand that if people are discussing that and moving charges and monopoles and dipoles, yeah, those people are into that. They're talking about it. They have the absolute right to talk about it. And, what we have is a problem in the dissident community where we get on each other's cases, where we don't listen to somebody. And you don't have to listen to them for sure. I mean, if somebody's talking about a topic on Saturday morning that you don't like, you don't have to tune in, that's for sure. But I think what we need to do is, as a group, we have to support each other. Because if we're not going to support somebody who we completely disagree with in the dissident world, how do we expect anybody who's in mainstream to swallow or to understand or to accept anything we're talking about? How do we expect a person on the street who doesn't even know know that Einstein could be wrong, or that there's an alternative to plate tectonics, or that particle physics and all the stuff you hear about that sounds crazy is in fact is crazy? And that the big bang that doesn't make sense to the average person is also crazy. How do we get them to start thinking the way we do if we don't accept them? Because I know, talking with new people who come to our group, new people who I have spent the time trying to get into a group. And one of the things is, James, I have brought some people into our group by looking them on the internet. Jeff Yee is one of them. Lori Gardia is another. Numbers of people I've had contact and said, look, you need to be involved with our group, and they have. So the thing is, though, is if that person has something that you disagree with, there's two things that are going to turn them off. One, you're going to tell them they're wrong. Number two is that you're going to start worse, is you're going to start pitching them your idea, right? I've subscribed to an ether model, and we all know ether exists. That's the big thing. And no, it doesn't. It's one of the models that exists. We don't have proof yet for these kinds of things. One of the things is we need to, all of us here, have to be tolerant of what other people say and think. When people are talking so much as someone says about energy, and I make it over here in the chat, I go, energy is a concept, at least for a lot of us, our people. Hey, you can put your opinion out there, but you have to be civilized and understand people are either behind what you know or in front of what you know. Sometimes a person studied it way more than you. And like Aristotle says, we need to go into every subject not believing it, but ready to be convinced. That's what we need to do. And so that's what I think we have to continue to do in the CNPS. I think we have to continue to evolve. A lot of things, James, that you said today, I think we can actually implement. We will have our conference. And one of the things I want to leave the CNPS people especially, I know, let's see, we've got 14 of you here listening live. Hello, Dissident Science people. Thank you again for tuning in. This is a two-time deal we're doing on the Saturday morning, so thank you for tuning in. So we've had today a good crowd. But the thing is, I want everybody to think about in the CNPS is we are going to have a real conference here, because the people who are coming to the conferences, we do have a group in the CNPS that look forward to every year, that look forward to publishing in the proceedings. They like that kind of cycle. And one of the things my father talked about is, yeah, you can publish and give your paper online if you can't come. We are accepting proceedings for people, papers into our proceedings that you will not be at the conference, and you can go ahead and present here. But what I'd like people in our conference to think about is this idea of opening our conference up to some more people, not necessarily to have them dominate or have any fights or have EU come in and that's all we talk about, but to maybe have not only a main room, but a breakout room for any other group that would like to be with us during our conference, meaning, hey, the CNPS is putting together a conference that's a real conference. We have the experience of doing that, name tags and proceedings and the facilities and running the thing, scheduling the thing. We do have a lot of, just like the EU people do quite well with that. I know Dave Talbot, those guys are masters at those things. They probably look at us as total hacks. But anyways, I'd like the CNPS people to think about it. We're going to be here. I'm thinking about start easy, like an EU group. I know we have a guy into biology who the MIR system, which was, can't remember, Sandro. So maybe he'd be interested in having like a breakout session. We can get a breakout room. So anyways, those are my thoughts. And if anybody has any idea of how anything that we talked about, want to drop me a line, send an email. I can put that up there. You can put Dave at, it's easy, David at naturalphilosophy.org, and anything. You put it, naturalphilosophy.org, or you can send it to David at Dissident Science.com, depending on which, if you're a subscriber. But those are my email addresses. Those go to my regular email address, which is actually david@dhilster.com. So anyways, you can send me anything. We can communicate. If you have any ideas, and better yet, if you have anything that you want to become part of the group and tell everybody about your work, we have this forum every Saturday. It's hosted by Franklin Hu, H-U. I want to thank Franklin and all the people who have been involved with this. I think what we want to do is, and they do too, they want to open it up more, get more people involved. I saw today, because of the Dissident channel, again, I appreciate everybody coming in on that. We've had almost 40 people, anywhere from 30 to 40, pretty much all day long. So I appreciate all of those people who've popped in, maybe listened to it. And if you have any ideas or want to talk here every Saturday morning from 10 a.m. Eastern United States time to noon time, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the West Coast time. And then I think in Europe between like 1 and 3 or something, depending on where you are, or beyond that. We have these forums. They're open to talk. You can come and discuss. We have a waiting room. This is our new used StreamYard, and we do stream. Next week we will not be here. If you're a Dissident Science person, you will not be here, but I'm thinking about trying to spin up my Fridays so the CNPS people subscribe to DissidentScience.com on YouTube. You'll be alerted. Like I said, I do videos that are pretty interesting, just talking about science in general, pretty much open topics. And then on Science Fridays, I try to do things, open it up and discuss things that are more part of things that I personally do. So that's always open. But we're always open to suggestions, ideas, and everything. And I want to thank everybody. It's 12:01. And if you just came in and you missed this, you will be able to go back because this is live streamed to our 2 YouTube channels. Again, thank you so much, everybody who participated today. Thank you, Franklin Hu. Thank you, all the members of the CNPS who pay their dues to make this kind of platform possible, because this is not free. The websites are not free to keep up and maintain. And I also want to thank everybody from Dissident Science letting me sort of bring this aspect of these Saturday morning chats that we've had for over 12 years now into the Dissident Science YouTube channel. And yes, I do have one. Got a couple subjects that I've been writing on already written there, and hopefully I can record with a green screen or something, because I can't record with this background. That's the reason. I will have a new studio in March, folks. So when March comes, I'm going to have a really great YouTube studio for everybody, and you'll be seeing better and more frequent videos. So thank you so much, everybody, and everybody have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Greatly appreciate it. And remember, don't accept anything that I say. Stay critical, stay thinking. I'm Dave de Hilster. I am your science therapist, as I say, from Dissident Science. Ciao for now.